tonight, hey,
You were listening to Forever West Old Time Radio Hour. I'm James Townsend. Joining me is Doss Boot. And tonight we're going to be kicking off part 3 of our John Swain discussion, who we tie in a little bit with Jesse Evans. We make no special claims, but it's fun to research both of those. But we have covered his life. We've covered his death. And now we're going to go beyond. Doss, welcome, man. Good to be back with you this week.
Yes, sir, man. Good afternoon. How you feeling?
Well, I've got a cold.
Yeah.
So a lot of people might notice maybe my voice is a little different. I'll be reaching for cough drops maybe, or taking a sip here and there, but we can push forward. I didn't
Sure.
miss it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So last time we basically ended with the death of John Swain, which was, what a scene.
Right.
What a way to go.
It is still, I still think about it as many times as I have read that. And, it could have just been the brilliance of the writer who wrote that article, even though it's just sentence by sentence, showing the activity, showing the movement, showing what happened, the words that were stated. But then when you just get that image of, he shoots him, right? Swain flies off his horse. The shell casing is jammed, right? It won't come out. And he only got a few seconds. Garl Vincent's only got a few, you know what I mean? Because Swain's up on his knees and he's moving, he's crawling. I mean, he's bleeding. But, I would also imagine, since they were well aware of each other, Garl Vincent was well aware that John Swain was a dangerous man.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that I've put in a little bit more context. And imagine that panic that he might have felt. You know what I mean? Like, I got to shoot. I got to shoot. This guy he's not dead. He's crawling on his hands and knees. He's trying to make an effort, and then in just a matter of seconds, you think of it in your head and you're reading it. It sounds like it took forever, but it just took seconds for Vincent to hop off the wagon, swing the, rifle like a club, like a baseball bat or something, and then miss, only to have the barrel placed directly against his chest in a matter of seconds. It is like you are reading a script, like, that tension. I started thinking about it even more than I ever have after last week, especially after you made the reel. I was like the whole death part, and just imagining seeing that on screen in a movie theater or something. I was just like, yeah, man. And I thought we would continue just a little bit more about John, even though he is passed now. He did die at the end of the last episode. He was killed January 4th, 1895. Even though the marker says January 9th, I have discovered very common back then. There was always a few days of lapse, and incorrect dates on grave markers are very, very common of that time. So I understand, but the actual first report of his death is on January 4th, and it happened on that day. And then it seemed like by January 8th, January 9th, then everyone was writing about it. So the marker says January 9th. So Swain's body was actually brought into town and was prepared at Houghton's undertaking establishment. And after he was prepared, his body was removed to the residence of his friend and partner, Deputy Marshal Matt Cook.
Really good friends.
Yeah, they were very good friends. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff about Suzie too that I don't think I'll cover in this one because, like I said, it's just very simple stuff. So-and-so is in town visiting, and Matt Cook's wife, Mrs. Matt Cook, shows up quite a few times as after the death of John as the Cooks and Suzie. I think they were probably being very friendly with her, and giving her a shoulder to cry on, whatnot. And yeah, it seemed like she had a good relationship with Mrs. Matt Cook. And they never called Matt Cook's wife by her name, just Miss Matt Cook. But I have been researching Matt Cook for their further research and stuff, so I will cover that eventually. But yeah, funeral took place at the local Baptist church. Services were conducted by Reverend W.H. Nichols out of Oklahoma City. The obituary says there was a rather large crowd in attendance, and a lot of them followed the remains to the cemetery, Hillside Cemetery, west of town. And I thought I would read this little thing that was in the obituary. And of course, I learned later on that this is where the Marshal Service and the archives, this is where they got that information about his background. It comes directly from this article. John Swain was born in Missouri, went from there to Tennessee, from which state he came to the territory. He was 33 years, 2 months, and 28 days of age at the time of his death. For 8 years, he was connected to the force of marshals in the territory, having only about 2 weeks ago surrendered his commission. During his term of service as deputy marshal, he participated in many dangerous conflicts, bearing himself at all times with courage and proving himself a man of indomitable nerve, a character fully sustained by the degenerate fight he made in his dying moments. He had been twice married, his first wife having been of Chickasaw blood, which gave him the right of an intermarried citizen in this country. He took quite an active interest in matters relating to this class of citizens, serving most acceptable as chairman of their meeting here last summer.
Okay.
So, I didn't get this one in here, but I'm pretty sure you came across it. I did come across a few things. One was January 11th, 1895, the Ardmorite out of Ardmore, Indian Territory. And it was not a, here's an analysis of the death, right? It's not the account of his death. It's just a paragraph stating that some people of this territory are not too saddened by the killing of John Swain. And while he was a respected deputy in this territory for many years, that many also saw him as a violent, dangerous man and almost like criminal in a way. That was interesting. It's almost that's kind of parallel to Billy. You know what I mean? Oh, great marshal, had an amazing rest record and whatever. But then you kind of find out that not everyone in Sumner liked Billy. So not everyone probably liked John Swain either.
I seem to remember at least one article or mention that said, or maybe just implied, that he was terminated from the Marshal's force.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have yet to find anything that would solidify that. And I know exactly what you're talking about. So there is a process here that I don't know how you really do it. It's called the Indian Pioneer Papers. And it was like something the Oklahoma Historical Society did in the 1930s. And kind of like the WARP writing thing they did in New Mexico?
Yeah, the
Federal. You remember that?
Yeah. Project.
Exactly. Kind of like the same process. And they interviewed a former U.S. Marshal by the name of E.H. Scrivener. And E.H. Scrivener in 1935, while being interviewed for these papers, he makes the comment, and I do have it here. And again, it's very interesting, but I have found nothing that solidifies this. But what I just read, it does say the word surrendered his commission, which I do find an interesting choice of words.
That is a good point.
Right. But nothing in the U.S. Marshal Archives about this. Nothing. I have dug. I'm probably going to have to go deeper, but I thought I would find something. So here we go. All right. All right. From the McLean County Historical Society comes this curious postscript to the Marshal John Swain story. Among the Indian pioneer papers in the OHS archives, it found the transcript of an interview with one E.H. Scrivener, a former deputy marshal from Paul's Valley, same territory that Fred Waite worked out of. So, it was in this paragraph that Scrivener stated, John Swain was a deputy United States Marshal at one time, and while he was a deputy, he was the head of a band of cattle thieves in Texas. At the time, I was deputy and got the proof on him and went to Paris, Texas, shared the proof, and his commission was taken from him.
Oh, boy.
Running a band of cattle thieves. Who does that sound like to you?
Who has experience in that, right?
Is that not insane? I mean, that connection is crazy. But again, listen to also. Now, that whole interview with Scrivener is longer because it's all about, him. They're asking questions about his life and whatever. They start asking certain events, people he worked with, and that's when he decides to mention this thing about Swain. He also mentions, I don't know why that whole part wasn't in here, but that whole interview is longer. I have it on a separate page. He actually makes a mention that Mrs. Swain didn't like him very much and apparently threatened to kill him. Interesting.
Well, that's
interesting.
That's some serious Jesse Evans energy. If you're
and when you had created that timeline and that was in there, so then I went and found, and I should have sent it to you, but I found the Indian pioneer papers. Like I found the interviews. It actually wasn't hard. They keep them in the OHS archives. So a couple, link clicks, and I was there, and I just had to search by his name. And there were a couple other people they interviewed that Swain's name cross-referenced with, but that was just because they had mentioned him as being a marshal at the time and him being a very respected marshal. Well, Scrivener is the only one that made this kind of comment about John.
There is, I'm looking here at the Chickasaw Enterprise on January 10th, 1895. It says Swain was a deputy of the Paris courts up to about a month ago when he was laid off.
Laid off. So, again, I don't think we're going to find anything that actually solidifies anything. It's like so many things we've encountered with the kid stuff. One article I found in here that they got it all backwards, and they said that Garl Vincent, the one that Swain shot, he was the deputy U.S. Marshal under Heck Thomas. And I'm like, wait, what? So
this one, the next day, the Wynwood Republic. This is funny. It says that Swain was one of those heartless, defunct deputy marshals that had lost all manhood by his reckless career in this country, and his demise was not unexpected by those who knew him. And we dare say his mission on earth was not so essential, but that his remains can be laid to rest with the assurance that Mother Earth gained more than we lost.
Wow.
We believe in the preservation of our officers, but when man becomes so reckless as to boast of killing his fellow men, then there is a terminus to all honor and respect. We have heard many express themselves as regards John Swain's death, and instead of heralding the news sorrowfully, it seems to have been a relief. And I mean, so we have two camps.
Sure.
Some people hate to, they applaud him, and the other camp just detested him, it seems like.
Right. And, that really could just come down to, how many people actually would have heard him going around boasting about men he killed? You don't really know. Right. So sometimes I think that is just about the camp. It get a lot of parallels with the kid. It's that camp of just ones that go, yeah, but he's a deputy U.S. Marshal, and there's murderers and rapists in this territory. There's whiskey peddlers. There's men assaulting their wives. There's all kinds of stuff, and these men are just doing their job, right? But then there's those people that, are going to question it. Why did John Swain have to shoot him 8 times? Right. Well, and I understand that, so I get that. I think it could be a matter of opinion, because it does seem like when he was a U.S. Marshal and after he was married to Suzie, there was a few articles that also expressed how much the community liked them.
Yeah, if I seem to recall, there was even a slight mention saying that he was wanting to get out of the martial business, and
yeah, he was just kind of tired of it, man. A guy who was traveling so much all over that territory, back and forth to Texas, and then to Fort Smith, in Arkansas. Yeah. So that's a lot of moving around. But yeah. So Suzie. Let's talk about Suzie. So John Swain is dead and buried.
Yep.
Yeah, he's laid to rest. And now we're going to go into Suzie. Now with Suzie, you and I were talking about this before we went live, that like John, after a certain year, she is very prominent in the newspapers. Lots of articles, a lot of little small things, a lot of big things. But her life is definitely a little bit, it's different. Like, let's say, and I got one example. On November 1924, she forms the Kiowa Women's Club, right? And then the Kiowa Women's Club did so many activities in different years. Like, I'm not going to go down and follow that path of every single thing that they did, because we would be doing another 3-4 parts just on Suzie alone, but she did have quite an interesting life after John. Okay, so Charlotte Susan Ryan. That is her actual name, Charlotte Susan Ryan. So I've always figured this out, that when you see it as Suzie C. Peters or Suzie C. Ryan, it's, Suzie Charlotte Ryan.
Uh-huh.
But all ancestry and all early census things say Charlotte Ryan. So interesting. I think after a certain age, she probably just decided to go by Susan, and that was it. Never went by Charlotte.
Yeah.
And it's never worded that way either. But yeah, her actual name is Charlotte Susan Ryan. She was born November 1st, 1873, Huntsville, Tennessee. Her parents are Thomas Granville Ryan and Martha Davis Ryan. Unfortunately, her mother actually passed September 30th, 1881. She had an older brother named William, born in 1866. Sister Mahala Emmeline Ryan, born 1868, and then her younger sister Amanda Elizabeth Ryan, born in 1875. Mm-hmm. So I also learned that because she had these other siblings and her mother was passed, when she first came to Chickasaw Nation in the Indian Territory at the age of 17, she came only with her father. And I know this because there's actually newspaper articles talking about the arrival of the other siblings. So she moves there with her father and begins teaching at a school in Alex in Indian Territory. I do not know the name of the school or what she was doing there, but definitely in line with what she ended up doing for the rest of her life. So, that makes sense. Of course, she marries Deputy U.S. Marshal John Swain, April 15th, 1891, in Alex, Indian Territory.
They only had about 4 years, huh?
Yeah, they got 4 years. Something else I'm going to bring up, too, after we cover the marriages I find interesting. And when you mentioned that, 4 years, I'm like, yeah, her marriages were very interesting. Okay, so John's killed January 4th, 1895, in Purcell. Okay, now, February 21st, 1895. And I believe I did send you this article. I sent you a lot of them, but this one is February 21st, 1895. It is talking about Susan commissioning the marble statue. And it's a decent sized article, but I did send that one to you. So February 21st, a little over a month and a half or so after his death, and the article explains that she is having an Italian marble statue in the likeness of John Swain made. The article stated it would be visible anytime after October 1st, 1895, and that it would cost $600. Now, I found out in a different source that Suzie received $3,000 in IOOF insurance money. And that is what she used to pay for
Oddfellows, right?
Yep. John was a part of that. So, and the source for that, about that the marble statue, and I sent you the article. Yeah, there we go. You know what the source for this was? Have you ever come across this? So you have the Las Vegas Gazette, you have the Santa Fe Daily New Mexican, stuff like that, right?
Right.
This publication was called Our Brother in Red.
Huh.
Have you ever come across anything like that?
No.
Yeah, February 21st, 1895, Our Brother in Red. That is the title of the publication, and they're the ones who publicated the first and really only thing that I kind of found about stating that she's going to have this made before it was made.
Yeah.
You know, that was the only thing. There's lots of stuff later after it's done, you know, in the Oklahoma Historical Society and stuff, but as far as, hey, she's going to have this done, you know, this was the one thing I found. So, yeah, Our Brother in Red, very interesting. I've never come across that before and never came across it again in my research. So
he dies. She's ordered a statuary monument to be erected in the memory of John Swain.
Right. And to be placed.
The finest piece of work in the territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. The statue is to be the exact height of the deceased.
Exact height. And if you go to the next paragraph or couple sentences, it says it's going to be 9 feet tall.
Right, must be the platform.
It says actual height. He's like, he's going to stand 8 to 9 feet tall. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I laughed at that too.
Yeah.
So that is how she paid for that. That's dude, after we find out a few other things, I feel like that's the only way she could have paid for something that grandiose. You know what I mean?
Right.
Italian marble. There was also one of the other articles that I don't know if I sent that one to you, but we discussed this, that apparently it was made in France. I haven't been able to find anything there. And I remember the article, it was the, I posted in that post. Either way, it's in the post, and it says that it was supposed to be made in France. And I started kind of looking up about how simple and easy marble could come by, in that year. And actually kind of sounds like it would have been not easy to come by, but she had the money. But there were quite a few marble mills, especially in Tennessee. Tennessee was a big marble conglomerate at the time. Yeah. And so I thought I was going to say, oh yeah, the only way you could get marble in that year was, have it shipped across the country, but that wasn't the case. So whether it was actually made in France or not, I don't know. And I don't know where that information came from.
She just wanted the best for her dude, man.
Yeah, she really did. And we'll find out some more about that. Okay. And actually, we'll show that a little bit later on because we did show it. I showed it in the post, but yeah, there are a couple photos of the statue. I mean, we could pop one of those on there if you wanted to, but yeah, the statue is pretty interesting, and it does look quite a bit like John. Actually, I think it's got him holding leaning against a rifle, and it's a pretty nice statue. And there it is, right there when it was at the Smithsonian Institute.
Yeah,
it's a pretty nice statue, man.
It really is.
Yeah, it's really nice. And now I can but man, back then though, I imagine getting a bill that says $600, our heart probably sank. But now you're looking at in 2026, like you paid $600 for that. Yeah. It should have costed you $6,000.
Man,
that's it's a beautiful statue. Beautiful statue. Yeah.
Imagine if that really is Jesse Evans. There's a statue of Jesse Evans in the Smithsonian.
Dude, I have thought about that so many times. Just the fact that if it was him wearing that marshal's badge and then achieving what he was achieving, that's something else I just can't shake if it was actually Jesse. You disappear. Everyone's got this story about what happened to you, but here's where you really were the whole time. Yeah, very interesting.
Unreal. Okay. Yeah, you escape from prison, you disappear from history.
Yeah,
a marble statue in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no telling. So you got the statue. It's very nice, and we'll come across some other stuff with the statue later on in the 1930s and stuff. So June 7th, 1895, about 6 months after John's death, her sister, Amanda Ryan, arrives in Indian Territory to visit, and that was featured in the Purcell Register on June 7th, 1895. And then on June 27th, 1895, same thing, Purcell Register announced that Susan had left Purcell and went to Tennessee to visit her old home. Now, her sister Amanda comes on June 7th. I would imagine they left together on June 27th to head back to Tennessee to see the home. And, I'd imagine that was probably a nice thing that her sister did, come into town, come see her first husband. She was only, 18 when they were married. So she's 22 when he's killed, Right. And, I imagine that she was probably like, my whole life is over. You never know how they felt back then, but it really did seem that she was all about John. Even as the life continued, it really seemed like that's, especially all the things that she would do later on and stuff, January 10th, 1896. I mean, almost very close to a year after, John's death. Her sister, Amanda Ryan, marries Charles B. Robertson in the Swain home. And that was announced in the Alliance Courier, Ardmore, Indian Territory, January 10th, 1896. So, sister comes, and a year later, I wonder what that felt like.
Yeah, almost to the day.
Yeah, it's very, it's just a speculation, kind of like, man, I wonder what she felt like. Now I'm watching my younger sister get married.
Right.
To this man. And her sister, Amanda, and Charles B. Robertson would both stay married to each other till they both died. So interesting, because that is very common. Long-lasting marriages were very common then. And then we're going to come across stuff with her marriages that are just kind of. So this next one, I also sent you this article as well. Okay. It comes out of the Purcell Register, April 3rd, 1896. It starts by commenting that Mrs. John Swain has traded her improvements and stock on her farm to Mr. A.G. Carter in exchange for his lot and house within the city of Purcell. So, I don't know exactly what those improvements were. I didn't, again, those are things where if we go into land documents and go into those kind of record collections, probably might be some stuff there. But again, that's for writing a book. You know what I mean? You go in deep in that stuff and find out. So what those improvements were, I'm not sure. But I remember when we did the second Swain episode, we had talked about how after they were married, after a year or two, they sold that house that they had in Purcell and moved about 12 miles down the Canadian River, and so John dies. She trades the house. Don't you find that an interesting choice of words? Susan traded her improvements and stock on her farm.
Yeah.
Now, and she moves into his house. So, the farm, the ranch, the stuff that John was building, I'm guessing that all ended up with Mr. A.G. Carter.
Right.
So she goes back into Purcell. So, okay, now let's talk about some marriage stuff here. This gets interesting. July 20th, 1897, Guthrie, Oklahoma Territory. Suzie is issued a license to marry one James Willard Jim Peters. However, no marriage record was given. They were not married. She was married to Jim Peters. I don't know if you knew that they were not actually married after the first license was issued.
Yeah,
I do not know why.
So we just have no record of their marriage.
I actually have the marriage license. I have both of them. Hang on. No. Yeah. I was going to say that why she doesn't marry him in 1897 after getting the license is probably something I'm not going to find in a newspaper article. It's probably a personal family story. Maybe there was something about the relationship. I don't know. However, a second license was issued on October 23rd, 1901 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma Territory. And she was married to Jim Peters the following day, October 24th, 1901. Wow. So that's why I was going to get to that point and go, okay. And they stayed together that whole entire time for the next 4 years. They stayed together. Right. So they just didn't get married after issuing the first license, which it kind of makes you wonder, was there something? I mean, he was a railroad man. He worked for the Santa Fe Railroad.
Right.
So, I don't know. Must have been something that she didn't like, or cold feet situation. Maybe she was getting scared after losing John the way she did.
Maybe she felt like she was betraying John.
Could be. And then, speaking of which, losing him, John gets killed in such a just insane fashion. And here we go. So she's married to John for 4 years.
4 years.
She's married. Yep. She's married to James Peters for 5 years. March 15th, 1906, James Peters is accidentally shot by the Ardmore chief of police, Buck Garrett. And I sent you another Garrett. There is one website, not source. Not source. I won't call it a source. One website that states that Buck Garrett is the nephew of Pat Garrett. And I highly, highly doubt that. Yeah, I highly doubt that.
We didn't find anything.
No, not at all. I'm not sure what that source was getting at. So yeah, there you go. So sent you this huge thing on James Peters being shot. So when you read the whole thing, they are legitimately at a house of ill repute.
In a
owned by house. Yeah, exactly. Owned by Eva Ryan, a woman named Eva Ryan. And it says, house of prostitution. Yeah, interesting, right? But Ryan was a very common last name then, so it still is. So the two men were at Eva Ryan's house of prostitution on West Grand Avenue, but there was a celebration of some kind of thing. I don't know if it was cattlemen or what, but there was like a party going on, and there were several people there. What the article basically says is that some kind of quarrel started with a cowboy. No matter what article I find that you read about the shooting of Jim Peters, nothing says who this man was that was getting in a quarrel with Buck Garrett. There's not a name. Like this article just calls him a cowboy, right? During a fight, a knife was drawn on Garrett, who drew his revolver from his pocket. And in doing so, the weapon was discharged. The ball went wild of its intended mark and hit Peters, who was an actual friend of the chief. And there was actually, most of those articles did comment on their friendship.
So once again, you have Garrett killing his best friend.
That's perfect timing. Absolutely. So, man. So, yeah, he was there. But I do find it interesting that they were both in a house of prostitution, regardless of what event was going on there or not. And this Eva Ryan woman, she would end up having to testify because Buck Garrett would, have a preliminary examination and he'd go to trial. But of course, it wouldn't take much. They would find it was just an accident. He wasn't trying to kill James Peters. They were friends. James Peters would actually die the following day, and his body was shipped back to Newton, Kansas, and that's where he's buried. And the source for
I wonder if Suzie was like, I can't afford another marble set.
She was like, I can't do something for a second husband. I did all that for the first one. It's like, you're on your own. Yeah, and the source for that was another one that I don't come across often, the El Dorado Courier, El Dorado, Oklahoma, March 23rd, 1906. So, okay, March 24th, 1906, so just the following week, Suzie applied to the probate court of Oklahoma City for the letters of administration to the estate of James Willard Peters, and that was in the Oklahoman, March 24th, 1906. March 30th, 1906, Miss Suzie Peters opens a millinery store. And in this article, it was in the Wawaka Weekly Herald, which was where she was living at this time with James Peters. They were living in Wawaka, and she opened a millinery store. And the grand opening was set for April 4th, 1906.
Millinery goods. What is that? What's
it's like ladies' goods and furnishings and stuff like that. Yeah. I sent you, there you go. There was a thing about her opening. There's advertisements. There was a lot of stuff. She actually ended up running this little store for quite a few years. Yeah. Like I said, like I could go down this path, and I did. I found advertisements. She'd be running sales, annual spring openings, things like that. But yeah, she had this millinery store there for quite a few years, even after the death of James. She stuck around and did that. And yeah, I sent you another one that just like had an advertisement that said Miss Suzie Peters and had a little like kind of like a design logo. I'm not really sure what it was.
I love this ad in the middle. The Star Grocery, phone number 3. That's the place.
Yeah,
that's just
do it at the bottom of
you
these
don't need
things.
anything else. That's the place.
That's the place. That's where you're going.
The guy, that's good. That's it, George. That's the place. Run that. That ad's gonna kill.
Yeah.
That's the place. What is
Oh man.
You mentioned something else to bring up. I was stuck on the ad.
Oh yeah. So yeah, she ends up running. I had sent you another one that was like just showed an advertisement, had like a little like design logo or something.
The
that
annual
said,
spring opening.
Yeah, Miss Suzie Peters, and there was a photo or something. The photo doesn't have anything to do with her, but there's her. Yeah, there's one of her advertisements right there.
By now, the leading dealer.
Oh yeah, I would imagine she was doing very well for herself. It seemed like, and again, she did other businesses, as we're going to find out. So again, it's a lot of little pathways I would have had to continue to go down, and I'm like, we don't have time for that in an hour. But June 22nd, 1906, same year, the Wawaka Weekly Herald reported that a new real estate partnership had been formed by Charles B. Robertson of Shawnee, who was her brother-in-law, right? He married Amanda. W.J. Ryan, William Ryan, her older brother. So he's there now, and Miss Suzie Peters. And it was titled Robertson Ryan Realty Company. So I thought that was pretty cool. However, the real estate stuff did not last too long. The brothers, William Ryan and then her brother-in-law, Robertson, they continued it for a little bit. Suzie kind of helped them, it seemed like, kind of get it off the ground. But within a few years, I had found an article that I just like, it was just them, the two brothers. Yeah, it's like maybe she helped them get it started, and maybe she thought she wanted to be a part of it and then changed her mind. I'm not sure. January 20th, 1907, the Shawnee Daily Herald had printed an article that was simply titled Wawaka, and it was a focus on key business owners within the city. And Suzie C. Peters is listed with a little small biography of her. Was pretty cool. She's listed along with an attorney named L.C. Lawson and a barber shop owner and rancher named H.L. Wells. So this little article just, focused on these business owners and how well they've established themselves within the city. And he had a lot of nice things to say about Suzie. She was well liked. People really liked her within the community. So,
but now once again widowed.
Once again widowed after 5 years. Also too, and I missed this. It's on here in my timeline. April 23rd, 1906. Go back a few months. The probate court of Oklahoma City had filed a motion by Suzie directing the administrator of the state of James Willard Peters to directly pay her $1,050. Money claimed to be owed to her by the State National Bank of Oklahoma City.
Well, that's interesting.
She would not receive that money.
Oh.
Yeah. They made an announcement the following day, and that the money would be used to pay off James Peters' creditors.
It's quite a bit of creditors.
Yeah, quite a bit. There's more on that. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff on Suzie. There's a lot of stuff. She did this probate court stuff, for a few months. Like she was really coming at them. And then the very next day after they made a decision, it was just like, no, like there's just too much money that needs to be paid.
Man. Yeah.
There was money to be owed on the estate, and there was all kinds of stuff. So and then the June 22nd was the partnership for the realty. And then January 20th was the Wawaka article. Okay. So here we go. June 29th, 1911, Suzie marries Oscar Schaefer, spelled Schaffer. in Oklahoma City. Now, I originally had in this timeline, and I had originally mentioned it in a post or another episode, one of the ones, because I had found it in an article about Suzie, and it covered her marriages with more detail than I had come across before. And it simply stated, was talking about she marries Oscar Schaefer in Oklahoma City, June 29th, 1911. I have that marriage license. It said that he was killed during an armed robbery in Guthrie, Oklahoma in 1918. And I was telling you that I have yet to find anything that would establish exactly what happens to Oscar. Doesn't mean it won't be found. I think it's just one of those odd things. Yeah. You know, maybe they spelled his name wrong. There's lots of different oddball ways to spell Schaefer, you know. Yep. But I did send you something, and in the email, on the caption, I put, notice how they referred to her as Suzie C. Peters in the top part of the article. In the bottom of the paragraph, they call her Miss Schaefer. Let me I sent it to you, and it was a 1917 article, I believe. And in the email, I had put in the caption, like, this is very interesting because it's referring to her. So it tells me she was still married to Oscar Schaefer in 1917.
Gotcha.
That's why I saved it and sent it, because that could tell me at the very least he's still alive and existing in 1917. But this article was so interesting that it referred to her as Miss Suzie Peters, which they all do. They all do. Right. After she marries Jim, everything up until her death is Suzie C. Peters or just Miss Suzie Peters. But they never, ever refer to her after being married to Oscar Schaefer as Mrs. Oscar Schaefer.
Which is so weird.
And it's so common because that's how they refer to her. Mrs. John Swain, Mrs. Matt Cook. You know, exactly. They don't ever call her that. They never call her that. They don't start calling her Suzie until after John dies. So very interesting. So when I had sent that, so in the bottom there, it refers to her as Miss Schaefer. So I sent that strictly as kind of like, okay, well, I know she's still married to him in 1917 because there's no reason to even mention him when they've already called her Suzie C. Peters at the top. But trying to analyze frontier articles is just a pain in the ass anyway, man. And, you know, you never know.
A special field matron for the Choctaw Indians.
Yeah, she started with the Choctaw first. Yeah, before she headed over to the Kiowa. Yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah. So not sure what happened to Oscar. I'm really not sure. However,
Susan Krause says you could write a good book on Suzie.
What's that?
One of our viewers, listeners, Susan, said you could write a good book on Suzie.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the plan. And I think, honestly, after John's death, and then the majority of the book would, you know, be about her life and how she handled, because there's so much, man. There's just so many things that she did. Yeah. Okay.
Rollins says maybe Schaefer didn't want her to take his name for fear of his life.
He's just like, listen, I'm going to marry you, but don't you dare change your name.
About this. Yeah.
I don't want no one to know. But here's what I do know is that by February 1st, 1918, the Holdenville Democrat out of Holdenville, Oklahoma, announced that Miss Suzie Peters had been appointed the field matron in the Indian Service of the Kiowas, with headquarters at Anadarko, Oklahoma. She left Thursday for that place to assume her new duties.
Which I got to say, Anadarko is one of the coolest names for a place I've ever heard.
It is one of the coolest names of a place I've ever heard in my life. Like, I agree. When I found out she was from there and spent all these years there, I'm like, where the hell is Anadarko? I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
Made me think of Donnie Darko.
Right. I think that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, and after that, man, she legitimately stays there, like, for the rest of her life. Everything she does at this point is for the Kiowa tribe. Okay? Yeah. Now, she does lots of things. And like, again, we'll start running through these last little bits here. Just so many things. November 18th, 1920, the American Democrat out of Anadarko, Oklahoma, reported that Miss Suzie C. Peters, secretary of the Cato County chapter of the Red Cross, has completed an entire survey of the county. She suggested that several positions be appointed, such as first aid chairman, nursing chairman, publicity chairman, and home service chairman. She also suggested that the county spend serious focus on building a hospital because it was a growing community and they were spending a lot of money sending patients out of the county for treatment.
Yeah.
Whether that hospital ever was made, again, something for the future research, but yeah. I did send you an article. It was kind of long, but it covered everything that she had done with that Red Cross. Or maybe I decided not to send it because it was too long. Like, it was really long, because there's a whole thing in there that it's in quotation marks. They give you a little bit of information, and the rest of it is literally Suzie talking. It's what she's telling them. And it's this huge thing. At first, I thought it was they were writing the article. I'm like, oh, this is Suzie actually talking about, here's what you need for the community in order to be healthy and self-sustain, And yeah, she literally went to every home in Cato County. Isn't that crazy?
She did a lot for the Kiowa, man.
She really did. And there's even more. Okay. So I had come across this before. November 1924, she organized the Kiowa Women's Club. The overall goal, it seemed, was just, again, to improve the homes and health of the Kiowa community. They organized Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. They worked directly with the state chairman for Indian welfare, stuff like that. And they just organized a lot of different kind of gatherings within the community. It seemed like, whether they were selling any kind of handmade dresses, anything like that for the Kiowa tribe. That's what the Kiowa Women's Club did. But of course, it was just for the women. So that was something that she did that I thought was really, really cool. And here's another thing too that was very consistent. And I wanted to start researching this a little bit more myself, just on my own, because I'm like, I had no idea this existed. So for 30 straight years, 30 years or more, after the first time that she attends it, she consistently attended Kiowa heritage dances, right? One of these was called the Gallup Intertribal. It first began on September 28th, 1922, and it was a ceremonial celebration of Native American culture, art, and heritage. And it was several different tribes, not just Kiowas, right? Several different tribes. And that was what they did. And the overall goal was to showcase indigenous cultures. And she helped organize these after the first one in 1922. She helped organize all of these Gallup intertribals for the Kiowa tribe, for the Kiowa to attend. And she was one of the few that, organized all these dances. And the Gallup intertribal was something that she was a big part of, And then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, wow, this is a big thing. It's a big thing. It's got a lot of history, a lot of books written on it. So yeah, she was a major part of that. And that's pretty cool. I actually sent you a photo that is a younger Suzie. It's circa 1921. It comes from the Suzie C. Peters collection, Oklahoma Historical Society. And there is a young Kiowa Indian girl standing next to her.
Gotcha.
And I sent that one in. Now we're doing all this Kiowa stuff. There you go. Now, the Kiowa girl next to her is named Daisy Otterman. And you notice that a lot of, and they did that. I understand, they gave them Americanized names, right? Because we obviously know that her birth name was not Daisy, Otterman, right? But I found that interesting because the Historical Society actually gives her name as that. And I would like to know what her Kiowa name was, but they didn't list it like that. They just listed what she became known as probably after she attending school and whatnot. But that was pretty common. But I thought that was a pretty cool picture. And that was just a few years after she was made field matron and, began working with them consistently. So I thought that was a pretty cool photo. Now, here's her big thing. So there was a school called the St. Patrick's Mission School, and it was within the Kiowa tribe, and that's where the Kiowa children's students attended.
Mm-hmm.
And Suzie became a huge influence to a specific group of Kiowa children with their art. Like basically she saw something in their style, and it was like a Kiowa style of art, right? That in the art was the children were basically expressing their myths and their culture, right? Within like Kiowa myths, culture, everything. And she got very interested. She began purchasing art supplies with her own money, such as watercolors, paper, canvas, etc., and really put a lot of focus in these 6 children. And very specific 6 children that received this, art attention from her. Now, I will do my best. I have all these names. I have all 6 of their names. I will do my best to read them properly. Okay. They were Jack Hokia, Spencer Asa, Monroe Satoki, James Okshaya, Stephen Mopope, and Lois Smokey. And Lois Smokey is the only female artist in the group. Monroe, Stephen, Jack, and Spencer would all end up attending Oklahoma University, and she was very influential and very supportive in helping those 4 get into Oklahoma University. This is kind of sad, but I also think it really also just shows more how much she loved this tribe and what she was willing to do. Monroe Satoki, unfortunately, became very sick with tuberculosis and died in Lawton, Oklahoma in 1937 at the very young age of 33. Monroe's wife, Martha, Monroe had written a letter when he was sick. And Monroe's wife, Martha, had this letter. And in the letter, it requested that all his paintings and his notebooks, his sketches, everything be left with Suzie. That was something that he requested his wife do. His wife, Martha, did so. And then Suzie sold all the completed paintings and almost all of the sketch notebooks, and then gave the money to Martha, and Martha purchased a grave marker for Monroe. She was a really cool woman, and to show, and let's bring up something. She has no children. She never has kids. And I think the way she expresses the attention and love within this community, it's made me wonder why she didn't have kids. Now, granted, 4 years with John, but come on. People had kids very quickly back then. And he was chilling out as a U.S. Marshal. So what happened there? Could she have kids? Maybe she couldn't have kids. I never thought about that. That's like a real deep personal thing I'd have to come across somehow. But no kids. Married to James Peters for 5 years. He was a railroad man. He did pretty well.
This
no
picture
kids.
Here is Monroe.
Oh, you found a picture of him.
Yeah.
I figured there would be photos if I just dig, but I didn't go to that. I actually thought about, I just get a photo of all 6 of them with Suzie, but yeah, I couldn't find something like that. Even the Oklahoma Historical Society, they have a lot of photos of the Kiowa 6, but nothing with Suzie. At least I guess I thought I would, but it didn't.
That would be cool to see.
Yeah, I guess in my head I'm like, man, as much as she did for them, I should be able to find it. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. And this group would become known as the Kiowa 6, and they all 6 did, other than Monroe passing at an early age. But you figure she was able to sell all of his art and most of his sketch notebooks. So you kind of figure that he must have been pretty damn good.
Yes.
So that's sad that happened. So Suzie, man, Suzie lives among them the rest of her life. and pretty damn cool.
Check this out: the Jacobson House Native Art Center.
The Jacobson House. Yeah, I came across that a few times, but I did not. Again, another pathway I would have had to go down to figure out what the Jacobson House was. But yeah, I did come across that, and when I started doing the Kiowa 6 stuff, that name came up quite a bit.
Yeah, so they got a bio of all the 6 here with photos.
Oh, and, cool, man! Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you can go to more and a current exhibition, permanent collection. It'll have the art of the Kiowa 6, so pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a lot. Yeah, other than Monroe, they all, did art for many years and were very well critiqued by many people. There was another Native American artist that she helped out a lot. His name was Woody Gumbo, something like that. I had it in a post about her in an article. And she did a lot for him too, like helped sell a lot of his paintings to, university art dealers and all, just all kinds of stuff. And I looked him up. He was a big Native American artist. Like his name is big. It's Woody Guthrow. I'll have to look it up, but she apparently helped with him with selling his paintings and, so just everything that she was doing was all with Native Americans. And that's really cool. But I guess I just kind of wondered, why the no kids? Maybe she couldn't have kids, obviously short-lived marriage, but 4 or 5 years is enough to, obviously get pregnant and have a child. And a lot of, marriages, we know that religion is very strong back then, just as it is now, but it's a little bit more, not so strict with the rules and people are going to do what they want to do. But I think it was very common, sometimes they would, get pregnant and have a child and then get married, but it was very common for that not to happen. The marriage usually came first, but the child usually came pretty quickly. And again, not every situation is the same, but I would like to find out why, that never happened for her, being married 3 different times. But right, if we found out that Oscar Schaefer legitimately does die in 1918, around that time, then yeah, all 3 of her husbands are shot and killed. It's just nuts. If that actually is true, then, and maybe they just didn't like each other anymore, or maybe they just split up and she went and joined and, started working as a field matron. Maybe she got that job and he wasn't interested in, moving to Anadarko. Maybe that was, I don't know, something I'm just going to have to kind of dig and find. But November 12th, 1954, Suzie Peters is officially adopted into the Kiowa tribe with a full ceremony. She was given the Kiowa name Komtugaya, which means good friend in Kiowa.
Man, how about that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Absolutely. An art scholarship was established by the Philomathic Club of Anadarko in her honor in 1963. The award is actually still given out annually. It's pretty cool. All right. Suzie was placed into a nursing home in the final 3 months of her life. She died October 14th, 1965 at the age of 91. Service was held at 2 p.m. Saturday the 16th at the Smith Funeral Chapel in Anadarko. And even though she was married 2 more times, she is buried alongside her first husband, Deputy U.S. Marshal John Swain, Hillside Cemetery, McLean County, Purcell, Oklahoma. And I sent you a photo of her grave. He has this gigantic marker, this huge stone, and she has just a flat, nice little marker in the ground that's got her name. It's got her Kiowa name. And there she is. And she's right next to John. You look at the plot numbers, they are side by side.
Sharing now.
And
sometimes
again,
the internet delays a little bit.
Yeah, married 2 more times. And after all those years, it's almost like she knew where she wanted to be buried. I kind of feel like that was really what it was about.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Charlotte Susan Ryan. Swain, they put the whole thing there.
No Schaefer.
Nope, no Schaefer. See? No Schaefer at all. It makes me wonder, man. Schaefer might have been, maybe he was a kind of a shithead or something. I don't know, but definitely something to find out.
Of her. What I love about this is, this is probably what, maybe like early 60s?
I would say, maybe a year or 2 before she died.
I mean, it looks so close to like this could have been taken in the 80s, the
Yeah.
70s. And like,
Yeah.
you've got someone here who witnessed 1880s, 1890s frontier violence
Yeah.
and life and the connection, to the modern world, to the modern age of, phones, cars,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And what she has seen, this lady here, just this little old grandma looking lady.
Yeah. And
Her
there's
husband could
Suzie.
have been Jesse Evans.
It could have been.
Nuts,
Yeah,
man.
the photo in the Historical Society, the Anadarko Heritage Museum, that's where that photo came from.
Yeah.
And we both, I don't know, I thought you did. I started following them on Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just started digging through there, 2-3 days ago. Found another photo. I sent you that one too. That one, it's a black and white photo where she's really skinny. Yeah, this was actually taken the year she died.
Wow.
Yeah. One of the, there wasn't a lot of coverage on her death, maybe 2-3 articles. One of them, as always, is more detailed and longer than the other one.
Yeah.
And her sister's husband gave a little account of them going to visit her that final year. And the comment was made, it was just how she had withered away and was very ill and kind of really couldn't move and get out of bed a whole lot. And they said that she weighed less than 80 pounds when she died. So
yeah,
I don't know what happened, but
for everybody listening, if they have Facebook and they want to check stuff out related to Suzie, that Save Our Anadarko Heritage Museum. For instance, here's a cool picture of Suzie with all these other folks.
Yeah, and, they have a lot of stuff on her.
Yeah,
they do. Yeah. But it's not like organized. You know what I mean? You just have to keep. Yeah, that's how I found that one, was scrolling for about 20 to 25 minutes down all their photos, and then I found it.
Right.
Yeah. So there it is in a nutshell. There was a lot more. I mean, she did all kinds of stuff, man. She was, even if it was just her name would pop up because she was organizing something new. She was organizing, a cookout, a bakery. She did all kinds of stuff. And even if it was just for that weekend or something, a lot of times they would feel the need to print it in an article, report it.
Iowa Joe says, what would it take to find out if Swain is Evans? Are there any known Evans relatives? And the answer to that is no, there aren't.
Nope.
Really, what would really help is we do know, because of Jesse's intake form at the Huntsville prison in Texas, that we do know what scars he had.
Yes, we have a very, very good description of him. And Iowa Joe, if you did not get a chance to listen to the first 2 John Swain episodes, definitely go back. And
he listens. He doesn't pay attention.
Okay. All right. I was just saying,
jokes in the chat,
that guy. All right. He's one of those guys. But Iowa Joe, yeah, the first 2 episodes, John Swain, we do a lot of kind of documented comparisons, possibilities. The second episode, we did throw up Jesse's signature compared to John Swain's signature on his first oath of office as a U.S. Marshal. But for those who did watch that episode, Jesse Evans' signature is one of the most goofiest things I've ever seen. Yeah. So it's really hard. And we talked about that too. Was he shackled at the time? You were like, was he writing it on something soft?
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Not a desk, not a table. What if he was writing on the back of a soft book or a soft leaflet or something? We don't know. But his signature is so weird. And John Swain is just a normal signature in straight lines. And Jesse's is really weird.
If we ever found record of Swain's, there being an autopsy or some kind of report of his body, and they're saying, hey, he had a scar here and a scar here that would line up with Jesse's, that would be a deal maker.
Yeah. I was going to say to Iowa Joe, that would be, I figured, the easiest way, because nobody, you can go to the internet and go down that rabbit hole. And before you know it, it's 4 days later and you haven't slept and you're pulling your hair out because you want to know what the hell's going on, because you're reading, wait a minute, he was seen here. There's this whole story about how he went to go live with his family and he's buried on the property, the whole Steve Cedarwall crap. Yeah, none of it is true. Not a thing of it. Nobody can prove any of it. Nobody can tie any of it to Jesse. Nobody. Not one person. Anyone out there, if you're a historian, talking all kinds of trash, blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. No one knows what happened to Jesse. No one.
He's just a phantom, until we can lock it down. And it's not beyond possibility, but it just hasn't been done yet.
Do you see Misty says, does the statue have the scars? That is hilarious.
Somebody peel back his sleeve.
Right. And so, but to answer that question, yes, you answered it. We had brought that up. You and I have talked about it several times privately. That right there, Jesse's intake, his description of his height, weight, hair, eye color. He's got gray eyes. It said like light sandy hair or something like that, but gray eyes, 5'5", and scars on the right thigh, and then was it left elbow, a scar just above the elbow, and a scar just below it, which he received along with Tom Hill trying to rob that sheep herder named Wagner back in 1879. And Tom Hill was killed, and Jesse was shot in the elbow. So that's where those scars come from. So yeah, man, Joe, that would be the best bet, is if John Swain had an autopsy done, but I have found out that in Indian Territory, that in 1895 would not have happened at all.
Right.
At all. There's actually a couple good articles I was able to find, and I read it, and I'm like, that's convincing enough, because if you just want to ignore John Swain and just see if you can find autopsies for just people who died in general in Indian Territory, like before Oklahoma becomes statehood, and you try to do that, it just didn't happen. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the medical resources. They just didn't have it. They became far more common in the area after statehood, like 1920s and stuff. Then you're going to start seeing it a lot more. But I think the chances of me finding that slim to absolutely none, probably none. And it's unfortunate, because I feel the autopsy could lead to something, but what if it doesn't? What if what if there was, and it just says shot and killed, gunshot wound to chest, gunshot wound to side, right? Yeah. Doesn't
Very
say
possible.
anything about scars, because would they have even done that in 1895 if they were giving an autopsy? Most likely not.
Right.
I think we're so lucky to have that information about Jesse.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
1 in a million shot.
Absolutely. It's so
we have
tough.
It about Beaver Smith too, by the way.
What's that?
We have one on Beaver Smith too, because he went to prison there.
Yeah, that's right. And it's when you were, all the stuff you found. And, one thing that I have come to notice and recognize, I'm sure you have too, in the years you've been doing this, is that there's so many things that just alter in a newspaper article by one letter in a spelling of a last name.
Yep.
How many times did you tell me, misspell Swain's name, see what happens? Misspell his name. Yeah.
Try to come up with as many misspellings as you can to search for it.
Right. And anyone who's out there, anyone who's listening, and you're a researcher, right? Even if you're new at it, you're an old hand at it, and you know what you're doing. But if you've ever encountered something like that, you're like, why can I only find up to this point of this and then nothing? Like the same thing with Jesse. Like he escapes, nothing. They don't report other than he escaped. He doesn't escape with anybody else. Nothing about him being shot, like we discussed from James Gillette's, statement in the 1920s. But that would be, that's what I would say. If you're stuck and you're like, why can't I do that? Go and misspell the name. Or like John Swain, instead of calling him just John Swain, the articles quadruple when you put in Deputy Marshal John Swain. You put in that, holy cow. He's everywhere. He's Texas articles, Arkansas articles, Oklahoma articles.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
and then some
just, if you search for quotation, quote, John Swain, unquote, then all of the articles that say Deputy Swain will not come back as a hit.
Nope. Isn't that crazy? They won't. They'll just be like John Swain. They're like, oh, it's a completely different person.
Yeah. If you know the both middle and first name, man, the initials like J.H. Swain or whatever his middle name would have, we don't know, but
right.
Many times in newspapers, they just put the initials, the first and middle, and that yields a lot of results.
Yep. When I was doing the presentation for Jake Owen, the Jake Owen presentation, that whole thing, William R. Uncle Jake Owen, right? At some point, the articles start changing, right? As they get, and they just refer to him as Jake. Yeah. His name is William R. Jake Owen. And then later in life, everyone started calling him Uncle Jake, right? So any articles that I found in a certain part of here, he's referred, when he was county clerk all those years, he's referred to as William R. Owen, right? Later years, they just start putting everything as Jake.
Yep.
But people who didn't know the difference would be like, wait a minute, is this actually a different person? And that's why genealogy is so tough. That's why it's so tough. And it's why it's so tough when so many are really bad at it. Like I'm encountering that so much. And you just told me, dude, get used to it because it's like that. And it's like the John Swain family tree, that Swain tree, the people in Florida, how they just
be making it up, man.
Yeah, nonchalantly. Yeah. Let's just go ahead and stick him with this family. But we won't think about the fact that this family never leaves Florida. They're in census reports up until all their deaths. All the kids get married, and it's like that. There isn't one single thing at all. No child named John. Even this guy had like 5 or 6 kids. Yeah, no John, no nothing.
Nobody else makes it out of Key West.
Nope. And all the kids were easy to find. So I don't put any stock in that whatsoever. So again, it happens.
You know, I really like that we were able to kind of shine a spotlight on the life of John Swain and also Suzie. And this kind of brings a lot of awareness to 2 figures of that time that folks don't really talk about a lot, which is great. I love bringing folks into the foreground that have spent so much time kind of passed over. And we got to spend 3 episodes doing that. Do you want to give folks an idea of what we're going to talk about next week, or do you want to just kind of let that simmer?
So as we wind down here and end the John Swain saga, I can tell you this. I do know with Forever West, when you started this, the whole thing was like, okay, there can be some kid-related stuff, but it's kind of not the point, right? I want to venture, I want to explore, and I completely agree. We've also talked a little bit more lately, was just personal conversation stuff, that we are realizing that we may or may not have kind of burned ourselves out a little bit on the kid history and all of the intricacies, right? All the individuals, all the things, the articles that we've completed, things we've done, and that there's so much out there like waiting to be discovered. And we could, again, there's people out there who are aware of John Swain, like Robert Buckley was aware of John Swain. Some people are aware of Suzie, but to really get into the extent, I was really surprised how little they're known and talked about. This next week, we are going, which is definitely going to be another probably 2-parter. We are going to a completely different world. Yeah. We are heading to the Arctic. We are heading to Canada, and we are heading into after the turn of the century, early 1900s, and we are going to explore the very short life of a man who supposedly, we don't know this is the name that he gave, Albert Johnson, and he was referred to as the Mad Trapper of Rat River. Yes, we are going to talk about Albert Johnson, the Mad Trapper of Rat River. It is, without a doubt, one of the most insane stories I've ever heard. And any of you out there, I could wait till next week, but if any of you have Tubi, the streaming service, it is free. It is the Tubi. It is the only place you'll find it. I have Amazon as well, and anyone who goes, but Amazon has everything, I'll just rent it. Nope.
This is a good pre-show study,
Yeah, homework. Absolutely. So the name of the documentary, you watched it more recently. I watched it about a month ago.
Yes.
It's called Arctic
Manhunt, I think.
Arctic Man. Yes. And then there's the rest of the title, whatever. So it's on Tubi. You type in Arctic, you type it, it'll come up. It is only 46 minutes long. But I really believe that everyone, if they just choose to watch this or just wait till next week, and hear us talk about it, they're going to really enjoy it, especially that documentary, because you and I talked about this, and I could not have agreed more with that statement when you said everything that happens to this man in this documentary is what everyone has wanted to happen to the kids' remains for a century or more, right?
That's right.
The documentary is insane. You are going to see a real team of forensic anthropologists, one archaeologist, and they are digging, and you are going to watch, if you see it, whole documentary as it unfolds, and we are going to discuss who that man was, what he did, and just why and how he led a bunch of Canadian Royal Mounties into the coldest part of the mountains. And he was described as from the Mounties as being almost, quote unquote, superhuman. I don't know what that means, but we're going to find out. So Albert Johnson, the Mad Trapper of Rat River.
Yep. There's the cover. There's the image.
There's the cover. That is his dead body. So
he died with a smile on his face, man.
He absolutely did. So get ready, because we are going to really switch paths next week, and we will dig into that man. And I really hope everyone tunes in, because I really believe by the end of the first episode, your jaw is going to be wide open.
Yeah. So
it's that good of a tale.
It'll be fun. Yeah. And that's what we want to do with this radio hour, is just cover all these fun, amazing stories that, folks don't know about or is often underplayed. And hey, you learn something, you have a good time, you chat with your friends, and we just bring back the radio hour.
Dude, I love it. I love that intro. It's growing on me more and more, like every week. Just as soon as that little harmonica, you were right. You're like, all of that for that harmonica at the end is perfect. And I'm like, dude, I love it too. It's so cool.
Well, I want everybody to remember the Forever West Old Time Radio Hour is brought to you by the Star Grocery. Phone number 3.
That's the place.
You guys have a good evening. We'll see you next week.